This is the Roller Coaster Podcast, and I'm your host, Lucy Q. Life is a wild ride. It has twists and turns. It's scary, exciting, and downright fun. So throw your head back, arms in the air, and come along with me for the ride.
Life is like a roller coaster, baby, baby. I wanna ride.
Understanding our strengths will help us gain clarity in our thoughts, vision, and pursuits. We can let our natural strengths shine to guide us on our path of self-discovery. Joining me today is Angela Howard to chat about her freedom model and how we can shift our perspectives and actions to live our best life. Hi, Angela.
Hey there. Thank you for having me.
This is great. So the freedom model, what inspired you to create something like this?
Well, you asked me that kind of before in preparation, and I thought, there's been many times in my life, many harrowing times in my life that circumstances have been pretty bad. I'd say the first time that something really shocked me was being 3.5 months pregnant and walking in on my husband with someone else. That was crazy. And a reason why I bring this up is because you asked me what inspired the freedom model, which was actually created during COVID last year. But so I thought, I need to talk about something more recent, like why would someone even want the freedom model and what are you getting free from? So just recently, I've had a sibling bully me. And I really wanted to talk about this because it's in my family, it's dirty laundry, so we don't air it. But your listeners get to hear it.
You know what? I can appreciate that because, as I mentioned earlier, I come from a British family. That sort of stiff upper lip, carry on, and everything looks perfect on the outside.
Right.
So I can really relate to when something like that happens and you sort of feel lost. You're like, hey, wait a second. What about my feelings?
What about my feelings? What about respecting myself? Because I'm the little sister to this sibling. He's my oldest brother. Anyway, been bullied, and it really sparked some, I would call like PTSD from the last time I got bullied from him. And here's where the freedom model comes in. It's like you can't change maybe the circumstances or the people around you. The only thing you really can shift and change is your response, or even if it's a reaction to what it is. So the reason why this freedom model even came to be is years, and I'm talking years of my own introspection, deep research, many workshops from, completely mind-changing perspectives, landmark forum, things like that, to loving, just choosing love, meditation, Buddhism, all wrapped up into this model that is meant to free you, free me. Let's just talk about me. Free me from the mental, emotional things that stop or block us. So that's what the freedom model is. And then it came into being when we were all pretty stopped and blocked back last year.
I was going to say, where I am, we're just coming out of being stopped and blocked somewhat. So.
Right. Yeah. A little bit more open down here in Tennessee. But anyway, that is where the freedom model is. And I feel like in my life, if you had to boil it down to the one thing I crave more than anything, it's freedom. It's freedom to choose. It's freedom to feel. It's freedom to express. It's freedom to pursue. So that's what it's all about.
And I find that, when we face those challenges in life, we ultimately have two choices. One, you either let it take you down or keep you stuck, or like you did, you become self-aware, you investigate it, you become curious, and then that results in some sort of inspired action.
Right. I call it getting better instead of bitter. Because it's definitely a choice. You could feel mad, sad. You could feel unempowered. You could. It's a choice. It's a choice. But to pursue your life in any capacity, to hold on to those kind of thoughts and emotions will only make whatever you're doing forward be tainted with those emotions. And it just blocks, and gosh, the word gunk up, just gunk up your relationships around you.
And, I think that's one of the hardest, or it was for me, it was one of the hardest lessons to learn, is that ultimately, when it comes to our own life, we have the choice. We have the choice what we think, how we feel, how we act, how we react.
Yes. And to me, that's what freedom defined means, is choice. If you're in jail, even you're pretty much told what you can and can't do all the time. But isn't it in Yanla? No, not Yanla Van Zant, but I think it's and I can't think of her name right now, but the Why the Caged Bird Sings.
Mm.
And that's the freedom. It's like choosing something that you have choice, given the smallest bit of choice, frees your soul. So whatever you can do to have that kind of choice in your life, that's what the freedom model is about. And I even kind of go through some chemical, emotional things that happen when things happen in your life, or when thought patterns become reflex instead of a choice. And you find yourself reflexively reacting to stimulus, whatever that is, in a negative way, to where you can't even stop yourself. And with the freedom model, you're given a perspective and some exercises to actually bring back the choice to maybe not react that way.
And, for me, before I figured out a lot of these things, I was in jail. I was in my own mental jail.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Because I was preventing myself from so many things and so many opportunities and the true essence of life, because I didn't realize I had the ability to choose.
Right. And many of the things that we think about ourselves or feel about ourselves were placed there by other people. It's just not true. The labels that we put on ourselves have come from somebody you knew, loved, or trusted. And they may not have meant to make you feel bad. They may have been just expressing their negativity. It landed on you, but now you've got to do something with it. So it's also about being responsible for the things that actually, when I say this, the things that happen to you. And that's where I do believe in law of attraction. And example of this is, as I told you, I've lived in many different places in the world. And as a young woman, I wasn't very careful. And you're from England. So back during the Sloane Rangers, the Sloane area, and you remember the punks that were around. So I'm talking about the 80s.
The Yabos.
But in Sloane, what is it? Sloane Square, where you ride the tube to Sloane Square. I was on a car, and it was only punks. And they were looking at me. I was the only girl, blonde, little like college girl in there, not knowing what to do, but not acting afraid and not acting like, oh my God, they're gonna. It's like, I'm just gonna be right here. I'm gonna hold my ground. I'm not looking anybody in the eye. I'm not gonna get aggressive or anything, but I'm just going to ground myself. And luckily, through a lot of things, probably luck in my life, nothing happened to me. But I've been in many situations like that, where again, you change the fear into confidence. I'm not saying this is going to work in the middle of warfare or some really bad places, but you'll learn to avoid things and people in your life that are not there to support and for the betterment of you.
And that comes down to, when you change your inner world, you change your outer world.
Absolutely. And that sounds a little woo-woo, but I had to change my inner world last year, as many of us faced a complete stalemate for me. It's like, what now? Everything in my life stopped. And I am not the personality that likes that. I push forward. I'm, very assertive, and I like to know what's going on. I want to go for my goals. And there was nothing for me to do there. And instead of driving myself nuts, I had to sit in it. I had to sit in my own head and talk to myself a little bit. Like, why are you so uptight? Because uptight is not going to help you right now. It's just going to make things worse. So it's also about choosing the things that support you in life, that brings you that kind of peace or pleasure. Seeking pleasure is a good thing.
And you really have to take the time to do that. It's called inner work for a reason. It is work. It's not easy digging back into your past and digging up certain memories or situations that happened, because you relive that pain or that hurt. But once you do, and you see it with fresh eyes and you can reframe it, it's like the pain and the hurt can dissolve.
Right. And that it does bring me to you wanted me to go over like the 3 kind of points of maybe the freedom model.
Sort of what's the outline for what the freedom model is?
So, we are talking about shifting perspective, and going back maybe and figuring out, the things that happened to you and looking at it from a different perspective. One quick little story. There was a man who is 6'4", and he was terrified of his mother. And somebody was doing some coaching with him over the internet. And they said, well, how tall is your mom? And he said, 5'2". And they said, well, how tall are you? And he said, 6'4". Well, what are you scared of? Because your mom can't possibly hurt you. Well, I'm afraid she's going to hit me, because that's the way she dealt with him when he was a little boy. But when he realized after all that even if she did want to do something like that, she can't hurt him. But it took some simple questioning just to get your mind to see a whole situation and a whole person from a different perspective. So number one that I said that where the freedom model begins, I do want to mention this, because the freedom model is not dark and deep, and it's not going to make you go into some depressed place. It's actually, because I've done so much of this, it's like, let's have some fun. Let's have some fun as we go back, re-script some things, and put a little humor in it. Like the big bad wolf, like my sibling, that's what I call him, the big bad wolf. Looking at him, but thinking, coming from, here's a shift in perspective. What kind of pain is he going through? And what if I came from compassion? I changed me, can't change him, but I came from compassion and looked at him and treated him differently. What would happen then? So the number one first thing that you start with the freedom model is, where are you right now? Where are you in your life, health, relationships? Pick one. It doesn't matter, but you've got to, before you can map, you've got to figure out where you are in your life. And knowing where you are in your life, and then radically accepting where you are. Whether you want to get in better shape. It's like, okay, I'm not in my best shape right now. That's okay. I'm going to embrace it. That's who I am right now. And loving and accepting yourself right now, because this is the beginning of a journey. You got to start somewhere. You got to put a pin in it. Before you can go someplace, you got to know where you are. So 2, once you know where you are, the question is, where do you want to go? And that's where you've got to take the governor off. That's where you've got to let the dreams come in. So some of the things that are done in the freedom model in these little 10-minute modules, I don't make it long. I don't have enough attention span myself. I don't expect anybody else to sit down and listen to something 30, 45 minutes, right? Just to do the work. You get to do a lot of work. We get to have a lot of fun. But where do you want to go? So we do some great exercises like script out a day in the life of your perfect life. But don't only just vision it, because we go through visioning and you journal, but then it's about putting emotions to it. Connecting emotion to anything gives it life and gives it power. So if you're scared, let's say, of the big bad wolf, and you can, I don't want to be, I want to walk into the room empowered with that person there. What do I need to do to shift me? And then magically, like you said, if you shift your inner world, your outer world shifts with you. It's amazing the difference. that people can show up when you shift your perspective about them. Now, can I go through this little exercise of how easy it is just to shift?
Absolutely.
So, in an art class, right? There's, let's say, an apple in the middle on a stool. It's an apple.
Okay.
And there's 21 artists around it, right? And then the teacher says, draw what you see. Now, they're looking at the same thing, right? But person A and the person right next to them on the right are drawing an apple, but it looks completely different. Because just by that little shift, just by some little shift in your mind and my mind about something, a situation, or deciding to react differently, can shift the whole thing, the ripple effect. It's so empowering. But we all need a little bit of help from the outside. Going inside is great, but what Einstein said, to try to solve the problems with the same mind, with the same mental thinking. That's right. Yeah. So having our help from the outside. So where do you want to go? How do you attract where you want to go? Your why, I put that in there. What's your why? What do you want to feel? Okay, then put that emotion to it. Then when you visualize it, have that emotion, feel that empowerment, feel that peace, feel that strength, feel that confidence. Even if you don't know what it feels like, imagine what it feels like. You kind of steep yourself in it. And that's kind of a daily thing. That's why I meditate every morning. I try to. I'm not perfect. But certainly when I'm having a rough day, I go sit in front of my altar, my meditation area, where I have all kinds of things that represent everything that I'm looking for in my life, and just sit with it, and then visualize, and then connect the emotion. And I guess then the third thing is, how are you going to get there? So where are you? Where do you want to go? Put the emotions to it. How are you going to get there? So this freedom model helps you map. Like, you don't land in Australia and just go, I'm going to wing it, because you might get in the middle. You might get a little lost. Right. In that big red desert. And then you would be really lost, like looking for Uluru or whatever. It's a huge country, right? So you usually use a map, but this is a map of your life. And, you might have certain things, like you want to have children, or maybe you don't want to have children. Maybe you want to travel. Maybe you want to get an RV and start just heading west. That's kind of fun, but it might be nice to know some places you want to stop on the way. So we use some mapping, and you get to have fun. Again, this is the greatest emotion, I think, to put in some exercises like this is, let's have fun. Let's laugh. Let's have ahas, and let's move forward and leave the things behind, free from the things, right, that hold us back. So I use a couple of models that I've learned over the years. One is the splash model, and that really helps the person, I'd say you, and who the royal you, understand why people act sometimes the way they do when they're around you. It's not that complicated, but you'd have to listen to the module to understand. But man, once you get this, it's like, and once you understand people's reactions based on emotional flow in their own body, and how you happen to be in that moment at that time, and how you are splashing their emotions out, then you understand. And then you don't have to be a part of it. You can be separate and allow the person to have their emotions, but they don't have to splash out on you. They don't have to get on you. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And, I think one of the important things that we have to learn is that somebody else's behavior is just that. It's their behavior.
Right.
And then you touched on something important earlier when it came to, having empathy for the other person, because hurt people hurt people.
Yeah, that's right.
So being able to step back and be able to question, okay, well, hang on a second. I don't like what they're doing, but how much pain are they feeling that they then have to turn around and do this to somebody else.
Right. And then there's boundaries.
Yes, and then there's a healthy boundaries. Yes. Yeah, it's not saying, but it's not to say, I mean, you can have empathy for somebody,
Right.
but that doesn't mean that you stop protecting yourself from their hurt. They have to figure out their own journey. And as much as you might want to help them because you've got, you're a few steps ahead and you figure stuff out, if they're not there yet, then you have to be able to step back, protect yourself,
Mm-hmm.
and then give them their space to be themselves.
Right. And I found that when somebody's exploding at you or near you, that they say that one of the best moves of some games is no move at all. Is just not push in, not pull away, not react. And sometimes by just remaining neutral, they'll implode. Because if they don't have anything to attack, if they don't have anything to defend, if you're going at them, they're going back at you. That's a no-win situation. But it's good to pull back sometimes, be neutral, not be scared and not be aggressive, but just be neutral and almost be present, almost witness. It's a very powerful position to be in that can be, if they're ready, helpful for them to see what they're doing. Not all the time, but that boundary, you can love someone and not like them. You can love someone and not respect them. I mean, that was a new one for me. I was told that by a very dear, intuitive friend of mine. She goes, you can love this person. Doesn't mean you respect how they're treating you or anybody else, but out of love and compassion, you can have that. And it's a softer way of looking at them. And at the end of the day, for me, it's about peace in my heart. What's it going to take to find peace in my heart? So for me, I'll do whatever it takes to find peace in my heart.
And I think we get hung up that just because somebody is family, that we have to fall into a certain pattern or routine with them. And, we can have family that we love, as you mentioned. We can have people around us that we love because of our history. They're our parents, they're our siblings, or whatever. But their behavior now is not supportive of who you are and where you're going. And again, that's where you have to protect yourself. You can love that person, you can give them their space, but you still need to, you don't let it stop you. You don't let it keep holding you back in those bad thought patterns and behavior patterns that you've had in the past.
Yes. And it makes it a little more difficult when you can't separate from the situation of that person because you have to interact for whatever reason.
Yeah.
Then it becomes a really good workshop.
There's going to be a whole lot of meditation going along with that one.
It's minute by minute,
yeah,
dealing with your own mind, in the moment, in the, somebody ignoring you because they're not getting along with you or whatever. And knowing that it's really not, I hate to say it this way, but it's really not your fault. It's not my fault, but I have to interact. So how am I going to interact to keep my integrity intact and keep their integrity intact and move the ball forward, whatever it is, because you have to interact. I mean, this could be like office politics,
Yeah. Yeah. It's something I say to my kids a lot is sometimes you can be right or you can be happy.
Right. Right.
They don't always live on the same street corner.
Or they say you can be right or you be dead right. And that's like being right in a traffic jam.
Yeah.
Somebody's
exactly.
cutting you off and it's like, that's not right. What I did was right. And then it's like, but wait a second, I can't engage.
But then again, it comes back to that apple on the stool. It's perspective. And what changes the perspective are all of the life events that brought you to that point. No two people have had the same life events. We can have similar, events, but the sum of the whole, you're the only person that has lived Angela's life. So you're the only person that can come from Angela's perspective.
That's right.
So,
And
f for me, we could have similar events, but my perspective, my life up to this point is going to give me a different outlook on things.
yes. Well, and it's also what you do. We call it the meaning making. And that also comes from your environment. Whether it's religion or school or parents or uncles or family or friends, peers, it's the meaning that we make of the things around us, especially in a kind of a religious sense, because that can be very tunnel vision in some ways.
Definitely.
Yeah, and I'm not pointing at any one particular one, but it's kind of like, if you're not this, then
Yes.
you're bad, you're wrong, whatever. And it really is about opening up. Like, part of radical acceptance of yourself is give everybody else that advantage too. Radically accept that their belief system is different from yours, and that it's as valid whether you like it or not. Because if you don't give that to someone else, you're not going to get it for yourself. And right now, as you know, in America, we are terribly divided, and it's hostile. It's very hostile when you ask people one or the other kind of thing. And it's just been that way. It's not fun. It's not fun at all. So it's kind of like change starts with you. So you got to change your inner worlds by accepting who you are right now. But if it's something you don't like, that's not serving you, like yelling at your husband or screaming at the woman next door, I don't know what it is. But if that's not serving you, it's like, okay, I need to change that. But that's you making a decision to accept where you are now, make the change, but also that net of compassion that we talked about for them that shifts your projective. But it's also about radical acceptance. Because what would it be like? Talk about a ripple effect. If we were to accept people, that's what you read, that quote. That quote was actually from, it's been used in a program that we're doing here in Tennessee, bringing the Clifton Strengths Genius to schools, to kids that are underprivileged in 10 to 16-year-olds. And they're taking the strengths test. And we are following them to see if once you learn what you're good at, what you're naturally good at, instead of constantly hearing about what you're not good at, you are working your whole life through your strengths, through your talents, their natural talents. It's a much easier way to go, but you got to accept that other people have other talents, and they may not mix sometimes, but once you understand that they're very analytical and strategic, and you're like big picture, let's love everybody. And that sometimes conflicts, but you can respect that that's why they see the world. That's why I made that quote. If we could see everyone through the eyes of our strengths and not our differences, then what kind of world will we have?
We would have one that was dramatically different than where we are today. That's for sure.
And it starts with us.
It does. Yeah. What is it? Be the change you want to see in the world.
Gandhi. Yes.
Yeah. And I think if we all start our days with that in mind, you're right. This would be a very different world. But unfortunately, unfortunately, I think in some ways we're getting more combative. There's more division coming. And I think sadly it's going to get worse before it gets better, but the pendulum always has to swing the other way before it can go back.
Yeah. And what you're alluding to is like, how far does it have to go before it starts coming back?
Yeah.
Right.
Let's hope it doesn't have to go that far, that much farther. It's certainly time that we start swinging the other way and find a little bit more peace and common ground in all of our interactions that we have.
Yeah. That old saying about divide and conquer, why should we let someone conquer us as a culture? I'm talking about us now in
Yeah.
America. Why should we let anything conquer us? Because where two or more are gathered, you're stronger,
Yes.
much stronger. And it actually just feels better being
And
on the
it's-
same page.
Yeah, I mean, why does there just because you have two different viewpoints, why does there have to be a division?
Right.
I mean, and that's one of the it's one of the things I'm seeing the most right now is, in the US, sure, you have this political situation that you're dealing with. In Canada, our politics are probably equally as messed up in different ways. But then we have this whole layer of what's going on with COVID and people's choices surrounding that.
Mm.
And it just looks like there's another layer of division
Yep.
being put upon us, at a time where, on one hand, we're seeing all the reasons why, regardless of sexual orientation, race, gender, anything you come up with, we're all just people, love us. But then suddenly now they're coming up with this new layer of division that's going to be in society.
You're talking
And
about vax, no vax?
yep. And it's just a case of just, everybody's got a different opinion. It's okay. Be you.
Right. Yeah.
Now,
Yeah.
I'm sure we've piqued some interest with the listeners about your freedom model.
Hopefully.
What is the best way for people to connect with you?
The website's called Wild Heart Expressive, where you can express your wild heart, wildheartexpressive.com. And it has right on there the freedom model. You can click on that, it'll take you right to it. And the cool thing is you can buy one module at a time, check it out, see how it feels, or the whole kit and caboodle, and really make a big difference. But I do want to circle back because we touched on some pretty deep subjects, ones that have to be talked about but aren't fun in our culture right now in divisiveness. But it is about changing, starting with you, starting with me, changing my reaction to myself. And only then can I change the reaction to the world around me. And then they change the reaction. You make a ripple effect. It's kind of like paying it forward. Remember those good old days?
Yeah.
Paying it forward. That's what the freedom model does. It helps us shift this divisiveness, hopefully, between ourselves. Let's say the divisiveness between who we want to be, who we know we can be, and who we are. Just think about that. Like it bridges a gap. So the freedom model bridges a gap between who you are or what's not working to what will work and what works. Oh, and I did want to mention something. One of the things and the third kind of thing about this is support. We all need support. You need to find your people and your tribe. And that's what, Wild Heart got launched last year around January, then relaunched again this year with the freedom model. But that's what my hopes are, is that people join the Facebook. So you can go look at Wild Heart Expressive on Facebook and Instagram and talk and share. And that's where I'm really hoping that people who want to be inspired and supported will go.
Perfect. Well, if you are looking at connecting with Angela, make sure you check out the show notes. I'm going to have all of the links in there. And Angela, thank you so much for joining me today and sharing your story.
Thank you so much for having me on here. I'm really have fun. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Roller Coaster Podcast. Want to chat or share your ideas about today's show? Pop me an email at hello@therollercoasterpodcast.com. Don't forget to connect with me on Facebook and Instagram at The Roller Coaster Podcast. Our theme song, Roller Coaster, was performed by The Lucky Setback. Audio editing by the one and only Jeff Quigley of Quigley Creator.
Life is like a roller coaster, baby.